Hello, my name is Ida Church, and I will be your presenter today on the topic of disasters and food safety. I'm going to keep this presentation more at the general level and not industrial. So what is food safety and why are we so concerned with it, especially during disasters? Food safety means that we are making sure the food is handled, stored, and prepared in ways that will reduce the potential of food becoming contaminated and making someone ill. Food includes water, ice, as well as foods that we normally think of like meats and eggs. Food safety is concerned, especially during disasters, because our normal is disrupted and the chances of becoming ill from food increases. During disasters, we want to make sure we err on the side of food safety. So during this presentation, you will hear me refer to 40 degrees Fahrenheit because we want to keep our food out of the temperature range where bacteria or germs will grow or duplicate or reproduce more rapidly. Using 40 degrees Fahrenheit allows us to accomplish this. Remember, we are going to be erring on the side of food safety. Disasters can be man-made or natural. Man-made disasters would include things like oil and chemical spills, bio or chemical terrorism, or nuclear disasters. Natural disasters include things like tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, or wildfires. Now, wildfires could be man-made if you don't put out your campfire, or they could be natural in nature, as if lightning struck a tree and started the fire. So looking at this chart, I broke it down to before, during, and after. We're going to talk about stockpiling foods, storage of foods, ample water supply, and essential items before the event happens. And then during, we're going to be dealing with power outages, fires, flooding, and things of that nature. And then afterwards, keeping or tossing food, dealing with animals and pests, checking on our water supply status, and other food availability that may be options for us. So let's go down the list and see what things we should consider when prepping for the disaster, provided we have the time to do so. As far as food supply is concerned, usually the recommendations are you store enough food and water for 3 to 7 days. Some people have emergency event supplies at the ready year round. That's okay. I'm not one of those, but it's fine if you do that. What types of food should you include in your food supply? Try to store foods that have shelf-stable life. So the stable shelf life. That doesn't mean you have to go out and buy MREs or the dehydrated food or other manufactured emergency foods out there. Try to get cans or box foods and ready-to-eat foods like fresh vegetables and fruits. This type of food will reduce the risk of becoming ill from the food because it can easily be cooked on a grill or over a fire pit or in your fireplace. It doesn't require a lot of water or prep time, and nor do they require refrigeration. So you've just increased your chances of not having the food go bad quickly. Check for expiration dates and always try to use the oldest food first. And if you're supplying food, you have to keep in mind that there are certain foods out there that will make you thirstier. Alcohol and caffeinated beverages will increase your thirst because they dehydrate you, just like spicy and salty foods, due to the nature of their ingredients, will make you more thirsty. If you're going to stock these foods and beverages in your supply, you'll have to remember to add some more water in your water supply. If you make ice cubes, freeze water in large plastic gallon freezer bags, or even plastic gallon jugs, the ice that you're making in the food grade containers can serve a dual purpose for you. One, you can put them in your refrigerator or freezer or even your coolers, and it'll help keep your food colder longer. And the second one is, as they melt, they will provide extra drinking water for you. Remember, water freezes, it'll expand, so don't fill it so full that when it does freeze, it cracks open your jugs or anything like that. Now, storage locations of food. The best way to store food is in a location that's going to be high enough to stay out of floodwaters. If you want, you can try to increase the shelf life of your food product by storing the food in cool, dry, and dark locations between 40 and 70 degrees, especially if you're going to keep them for like a whole year in advance or something. Food should be stored away from products that could cause contamination and make food unsafe to eat. What do I mean by this? Well, let's look at 3 things that we should be concerned with. 1, always store food away from chemicals. That's your bleach, gasoline, paint thinners, any kind of solvents, because food can absorb the odors of chemicals, or if the chemicals accidentally get spilled on your food. Remember, you cannot cook chemicals out of food. Secondly, your food supply should be stored in a manner that is away from heat sources or factors. And what do I mean by that? I mean, don't store them next to your stoves or the exhaust on your refrigeration units. Those exhausts put out heat, and heat will spoil food more rapidly. And the third way is concern is foods need to be stored in a way to protect them from pests and other elements of contamination. So you can do that by wrapping your boxes or storing containers in like plastic totes with lids, and close them so that the container is as waterproof and airtight as possible. What about ramping up our water supply? Well, the rule of thumb is to store 1 gallon of water per day per person. Don't forget your pets if you have pets. And if you live in a humid or hot area, you're going to want to store a little bit more water, as well as if you're storing the alcohol and the food supplies that make you thirstier. Bottled water can be used, or you can store other water. And you can do this by using clean, empty containers with lids. You can also fill up bathtubs and buckets and label them "do not drink." This water could be used for flushing toilets or washing. Do not use containers that are not food grade containers for your drinking water or food storage. Check the expiration dates on your bottled water. The extra stored water should be replaced every 6 months if you're stockpiling it for a long time, like a year or something. Of course, if either the bottled water or the other water has an odor, you should throw it out. Essential items. What do you need as essential items? I think you should have a manual can opener, maybe dishwashing detergents. I would have an animal proof, pest proof container for my garbage. Permanent markers. You want single use articles, paper towels and stuff, clean towels, clean plastic bags and containers with lids. And we want to have a sanitizer such as unscented bleach in a liquid form with 5.25% concentration, because this can be used for general cleanup. It can also be used, as you'll find out later on, to disinfect your water. But you'll also need proper test strips. You'll have to get chlorine test strips. Scented bleach, when used as a sanitizer, uses its effectiveness as a sanitizer per the FDA. So always get unscented bleach when you use a sanitizer. Thermometers are good to have, both food and air thermometers, so that you can monitor your temperatures in your refrigeration and freezer units and coolers. Remember, we're going to try to keep our refrigerated foods at 40 degrees or below and our frozen foods at 0 degrees or below. So we need to keep them out of that temperature range where the rapid growth is going to happen. Place your air thermometers near the doors of the units, because that will be the warmest part. Other methods that we could use to try to keep our foods cold longer is, well, if you have a generator, that's great. Hook them up to your refrigerator and freezer units. But if you don't, you can store bags of ice in your refrigerator and freezer units to aid in keeping your food colder. The bags of ice will also assist you in filling up your freezer and refrigerator unit's capacity. Coolers with ice and gel packs can be used to help keep your foods cold. You should have coolers, especially if you anticipate the power to be out for a long time. Say a hurricane is coming or something, you know it's going to be out longer than 4 hours, probably days, right? And then you're going to store foods that'll go bad quickly, or fresh foods in your coolers, or foods that you're going to frequent your refrigerator for, so that you're not in and out of that unit so much. Store those in your coolers. You can freeze food too to help keep them colder longer. I'm from Michigan, and we used to lose power in snowstorms all the time when I was growing up. My mom used to freeze the milk and stuff. That helps in keeping the food cold longer. So you can freeze milk, meats, leftovers. There's also the option of using dry ice. I caution everyone with dry ice because you need to be aware of the dangers of it. It depletes oxygen. And also, dry ice can cause damage and burns to your skin. So if you're going to use dry ice, you must handle it carefully, and you should wear the proper protective equipment, such as thick, dry gloves. Uh-oh, my thumb is too fast here. When the power goes out, what happens? Now, this is where our time starts, right? So the power is out. We have our coolers in place. We have our foods in there. Refrigerators and freezer doors we want to keep closed. And hopefully we could keep them closed all the time, but at least at the bare minimum in and outs. That means don't be peeking. Don't go in and out every few minutes. Freezers should hold about 48 hours if it's at full capacity and no doors are open. And if it's at half capacity, it'll be 24 hours if no doors are open or minimal. Your refrigerator should be able to hold cold for about 4 hours with minimal door opening or no door opening. So never taste food to see if it's okay or not. When in doubt, throw it out. If you lose power for 4 hours or less, and if the doors are left closed the entire or very minimal, the unit should be okay. The food inside should be okay, but always err on the side of food safety. Look for signs of cross-contamination with other foods. Juices from meat products leaking onto other products. Throw away any ready-to-eat foods that have been in contact with meat juices. As a precaution, you should use your food thermometer and check temperatures. But if you check temperatures, it must be done as soon as the power is restored, not when the power's been running for hours, bringing the temperatures back down. That's going to give you an incorrect reading. If the temperatures are good at 40 degrees or below, cook to the correct temperatures for that product and bring the bacteria level to a safe level, and it should be fine to eat. So any consumable foods like your milks and meats and fish and stuff at 40 or less should be safe if you cook and eat it as soon as possible. If your food temperatures rise to a temperature of 40 degrees or higher, or if you don't have a food thermometer, that'd be like room temperature, for 2 hours or more, then you should discard your food and throw it away. Don't gamble with it. Throw away foods that smell abnormal, are discolored, have uncharacteristic texture, touch to it. If it's sticky and stuff, then you should throw the product away. If the product is at 90 degrees or higher for an hour, you should throw that away too. But if it's more than 2 hours at 40 degrees, discard it. So what about foods in freezers? Remember, with frozen foods, you cannot rely on looks or odors. If the food package in the freezer has visible ice crystals inside it, or it's at 40 degrees or below, it can be safely refrozen or cooked. However, the quality of this product may be affected. So let's recap when we're going to throw foods away. Food that's been thawed 40 degrees or higher or has evidence of decay. Food that's been out of temperature for we don't know how long, or the power has been off for more than 4 hours, or food that's been held over 2 hours at a temperature above 40 degrees should be discarded. Fire events. Fire events have smoke, heat, toxic poisonous fumes, the chemicals or water used to combat the fire, and possible power outages from the fire that could damage and contaminate the food products. Sometimes, if cans or jars of food are exposed to extreme heat, they will actually split open or burst or become so damaged enough to expose the food product to elements and contaminants, thus making the food unsafe. Cans and jars of food can be affected from heat, as can trigger the actual cooking or reheating process of the food, or even the growth of spoilage organisms inside that container. Materials that burn in the flames of the fires sometimes release toxic, poisonous fumes into the air, in addition to the smoke from the fire and the chemicals or water that's being used to combat the fire. So what are we going to throw away? We're going to throw away all food products in contact with the fire suppression systems or firefighting agents, including the water, heat, or exposed to the smoke or fumes. Food kept outside of the refrigeration units that were exposed to the fire elements, like foods in open containers or in porous, absorbent, permeable packaging, such as cardboard boxes, foil, plastic wraps, bottles, and jars that have screw top lids, including spices, single-use articles, extracts, foods in storage bins, bags of fruit, vegetables, potatoes, cork-lined containers, peel-off tops, or wax seals should all be discarded. Remember, refrigerator and freezer units may not necessarily be airtight, so food inside these units may not be safe. Discard the food if you notice the food has an odor while you're prepping it. Remember, these chemicals cannot be washed off from food. The food may look fine, but is still contaminated. Do not taste it to see if it's okay. Pests and garbage issues can create problems too, because animals are going to be, their life was disrupted just like ours. So during a disaster event, it generates enormous amounts of waste, debris from personal items, household items, chemicals, boats, vehicles, food, all kinds of stuff. And to add to this, we continue to generate waste during the recovery stages. So we have to remember things are not normal after a disaster. Failure to be able to remove enormous amounts of waste, which was and continues to be generated in a timely manner, could result in an infestation of rodents, insects, and animals, which could result in diseases being spread. Keep in mind, we're not only talking about solid waste issues, but also liquid waste issues. You cannot dump your liquid waste on the ground or in the streets. Pests, rodents, and animals, both domestic and wild, will be seeking shelter, food, and water too. So discarded or spoiled food will attract these vermin, rodents, and other animals. They may find your food supply and eat some, which means now that food is considered contaminated and unsafe to eat. Remember, never eat food that an animal has had direct contact with the edible part of the food. Rodents, especially rats and mice, have been known to chew through electrical lines, which could cause a fire. Also, people discarding chemicals and other waste. Chemicals don't always mix right. Sometimes they can create another incident or fire. So keep in mind that we need to reduce this threat. How are we going to do that? We're going to check access points and entries to our home and seal them if you have the provisions to do so. Store food in a manner which is pest, rodent, and animal proof, or the best you can with the materials you have at hand. Set up a designated area to start storing your waste and try to make it as pest and animal proof as possible. I would store it away from where I store my food, right? Or cook my food. In other words, we're going to try to remove sources of food, water, and shelter from the unwanted pests and animal guests. With the increase in water from a disaster, you're usually going to have increase in like mosquitoes too. Other incidences not related to food, but animals could carry rabies and stuff. So we have to be concerned with where we're keeping our garbage and how it's going to attract animals. Floodwaters, they carry many things, including marine and other animals, whether alive or dead, microorganisms, including the germs that will cause illness, sludge, raw sewage, fuels, oils, pesticides, and other hazardous chemicals and substances. And when they encounter food, it is considered contaminated, thus making it unsafe to eat. Disease can spread quickly in both humans and animals. During the flood event, the following areas may be affected and become contaminated: our water tables, our well waters, irrigation wells, whether it's for crops or lawns, and even the water supplied to the water treatment plant, which may become so contaminated that the concentration is too high to properly treat the water. Remember, a well, whether it's private or public, doesn't have to be directly flooded or impacted itself. Widespread flooding in the surrounding areas could still cause trouble. The area which did flood could contaminate the aquifer or shallow water tables, which in return could cause septic systems to fail or not work properly. Anyone who is on public or private well water should have their water tested after flooding has occurred in the area and when the wellhead itself has been flooded. This should be done to ensure the water is safe to drink. People on municipal water systems or city water should follow up with the water system supplier to ensure the water is indeed safe to drink and use. Usually, larger water system suppliers will provide notices if there's a problem with the water. What do? We need safe drinking water. We need it for cooking. We need it for hygiene. We need it to keep hydrated. So if you know or you think your drinking water is contaminated, you should not use it for drinking, washing dishes, brushing your teeth, or food prep, washing your hands, or making ice. Never use water from things like the heating systems, like your radiators or boilers. And don't try to use the water in your refrigerator because you have the kind that makes the ice in your glass or fills up your glass with water, because that's pulling from the contaminated water source. So do not use those. Instead, use your bottled water or other stored water if it was stored in a manner above the floodwaters and protected from other contaminants. Follow water advisories that will be issued. There are 3 different types of notices. The first one is boil water. This means that you need to boil the tap water before you drink it. You need to bring this water to a rolling boil for 1 minute. If you live in higher elevations, and I'm talking about those greater than 6,500 feet, they would need to boil their water for 3 minutes. Then you're going to let it cool. You'll transfer it to a container with a lid. This method has been said to be the preferred and most safest method to use for bringing your water safe again. So after you boil the water, you can drink it. You can use it for food prep or making ice, right? But what if you don't like the taste of this boiled water? Try pouring the boiled water in between 2 clean containers, or even your other water if you think it tastes stale. And when you bring it back and forth between these 2 containers, it's going to introduce oxygen back into the water. Then let it stand for a few hours and that'll absorb some more oxygen. Or you can try putting a pinch of salt in it to restore some flavor into it. The second notice is do not drink. This notice, you cannot drink the water with, right? But you should not wash your dishes or use it for food prep or ice either. And the third notice is do not use. That means you don't use the water for any reason, including drinking, taking a shower, or washing your clothes, brushing your teeth, nothing. Now, there is a caution warning. If the waters have contaminants, other contamination like fuels, hazardous toxic chemicals, or radioactive materials, the boiling and disinfection methods will not be effective in making that water safe to drink again. Actually, the boiling process itself could actually increase the concentration of the contaminant in the water. So if you know the water's contaminated with, or you suspect it's contaminated with fuel or chemicals, you need to use a different water source or your bottled water. But what if you can't boil your water? What do? There are alternative methods for disinfecting your water so that you can drink it. You can make small batches of safe drinking water by using bleach, iodine, or chlorine tablets. Today, we will just talk about disinfecting water using household bleach. We want to use unscented bleach. Usually it's at 5.25% concentration. And in the US, bleach usually has a sodium hypochlorite concentration between 5 and 9%. Other countries, it's lower, but in the US, it's usually between 5 and 9%. So how do we do this? We add 1/8 teaspoon, or about 8 drops, or half a milliliter of unscented bleach to every gallon of water. Then you're going to stir the mixture and you're going to let it stand for 30 minutes before you use it. And if you're just going to store it, you're not going to use it right away, then you need to store it in a clean container with lids. Now, what if it's cloudy after you do that? So if your water is cloudy looking, you can strain it through a clean cloth or a paper towel, or even like a coffee filter. Then you're going to double the chlorine, so the bleach. So you're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of unscented bleach, or 16 drops, to 1 gallon of water. Stir it up again, let it set for 30 minutes, and then again you would store it in a clean container with lids. Now, after the floodwaters recede, private or public wells should have their well pump checked for debris and cleaned out by the well driller. Once the floodwaters have receded, everyone, whether you're on a private or public well, or if you're on city water, you need to flush out your lines for 15 minutes. Now, after flushing out the lines, wells need to be shocked with chlorine. It is recommended that shock treatments of the wells be done by professionals to ensure it's properly done and in a safe manner. Have the well water tested afterwards to ensure it's safe to drink. If you're on a public water system, the 15-minute flush of the line should be sufficient because there's residual chlorine concentration left in those lines. Come on. So do we keep or toss the foods that have been in contact with floodwaters? Never consume foods or beverages that have encountered floodwaters if they are not in a waterproof container. If you are unsure if it has encountered floodwaters, dispose of it. So if the edible part of a food has touched floodwaters, do not eat it. Do not consume it. Due to the difficulty to properly clean and sanitize the containers, the following food products should be thrown away if they have had contact with floodwater. Open containers and packages of food. Unopened jars and bottles with screw caps. Twist off lids. Pop off caps. Snap lids, crimped lids, wax seals, things like seasonings, honey, extract, flavoring items, beverage cans and bottles, cooking oils, cardboard boxes like cereal boxes, juices, containers that are made of cloth, paper, or fiber, like those that are you find with sugar, flour, pasta, and salt. Anything in soil or cellophane packages, home canned goods. All meats, vegetables, fruits, poultry in contact with floodwaters need to be discarded. If floodwaters have entered your refrigerator or freezer, you should throw away any foods that are not in metal cans. You need to toss away damaged cans. If they're leaking, have holes, they're heavily rusted, dented, crushed, swelling, bulging, cans that cannot be opened with your manual can opener, or they cannot be stacked upon on top of each other easily, need to be discarded. So is there anything that we can really clean and use again? There's a few things. Commercially vacuum packaged retort pouches, like those you find in tuna, or the cans, sealed cans of food that have not been damaged. So remember, certain containers of foods that have been submerged in floodwaters cannot be salvaged. Cans of food that do not have evidence of dents or rust, or the rust that can be easily removed, can be saved if they are handled properly before they are opened. So how do we do this? You first remove the label because it cannot be cleaned and sanitized. Germs will harbor in underneath there. And you're going to wipe away any dirt, debris, silt, or soil. Then you're going to wash the containers with soap and water, using hot water if you can. You need to rinse the containers with potable water, and potable water means it's drinking water or approved water, safe water. This is an important step because soap residue and dirt reduces the effectiveness of your sanitizer. So sanitize the containers by immersing them in two different methods. One method you could use is you can boil it for 2 minutes, or you can place them in a solution of unscented bleach sanitizer, and that solution is going to be made up of 1 cup or 8 ounces or roughly 237 milliliters or 240 milliliters of unscented bleach to 5 gallons of water. You're going to place the containers in the sanitizing solution and you're going to soak it for 15 minutes. Then you need to let the containers air dry for at least 1 hour. Then with your permanent marker, you're going to relabel the cans, what food was in there. And if you know the expiration date, include the expiration date on that can, and then you can store them for reuse. But you would want to use the reconditioned cans or containers as soon as possible. So, can it be salvaged? Items submerged in floodwaters. The container type is a screw top lid. Do you think that can be salvaged by using either by cleaning and either boiling it or submerging it in the sanitizer solution? That'd be no. Cans with evidence of dents or rust. Would you try to salvage those? Yes. Twist off caps. Do you think that would be something you should try to save? No, it's too hard to clean underneath those caps. Dents impacting side seam or seal of the can. Do you think that would be something that you could save? No. Pop off or crimped tops? No. Cans with rust that can be easily removed? Yes. Or containers that have tabs like your pop cans and stuff? That would be no. Other food sources that are going to be available to you after a disaster event will be mobile vendors will be coming in, donations will be happening and coming in on truckloads, mass feeding programs will be set up by things like Red Cross and churches. The health department will be inspecting these programs to make sure that they're okay. When I was down with Katrina, things were coming in so fast and things are disrupted a lot. They were just piling clothes and stuff in parking lots, and people were going through them and stuff. So be leery of anyone that says, they made you something from their home. You don't know where their home is, right? I don't know if they have safe water or what, but I hope you guys learned something, or at least was a review for you. This is all I have for you today. So I hope that you found it interesting.
Thank you very much, Ida. We will open it up for a minute or so. If anyone has any questions for Ida, you can either unmute yourself and ask now or put them in the chat. All right. Well, hearing none, Ida and Olivia, thank you all very much. Olivia for coordinating this, and Ida for bringing the content. We will post this recording as soon as we get it cleaned up. And if there are any questions or concerns before we leave, I'll take them now. If not, everyone have a great day and enjoy the rest of your lunch hour. Thank you very much.